Okay, so let's begin with a prayer. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Okay, so today we are going to be doing a guided meditation and a contemplation based on the teachings of Advaita Vedanta and non-duality in general. So for this session of guided meditation, let us try to follow standard practices related to the meditation, such as we try to sit straight, not too tight, not too relaxed, because if you're too tight, then there's a kind of a stress that will transfer to the mind from the body. And if you're too relaxed, then you become a bit lethargic. So we try to sit in a comfortable posture, but in a posture that is suitable for meditation. And as much as possible, we try to switch off any distractions, such as our phone and any other gadgets. One of the main important things when we sit for meditation is to have a clear intention, that what we call as a sankalpa for this part of the meditation, that I will try to remain still, that I will not engage in other activities for this period. And also, I will not entertain other thoughts in the mind, such as unwanted thoughts related to the next part of our day, what I should be doing afterwards. Since this is going to be a meditation and a contemplation exercise together, the earlier meditation part is so that we can bring the mind to a certain focus, ekagrata, single-pointedness. If our mind is not single-pointed, then it's harder to engage in contemplation. So let us first start with a clear intention that for the next few minutes, I will exclusively focus my mind on meditation. Now, to help with the meditation practice, we can take a couple of deep breaths and completely exhale out. Natural, long, deep breaths. Exhale out completely. So take another deep breath and completely exhale out, letting out not just the physical restlessness, but also any kind of mental stress, mental lethargy, everything we just let go. The breath is the medium that connects the body and the mind together. So we can use the breath to help us in trying to bring the mind to try to find a way to control the mind. Physically, as we engage in outward activities, it's hard to similarly direct and control the mind. The mind can only be brought to a point of stillness through clear intention, through pranayama, and through consciously letting go of all thoughts that are unrelated to our present intention. So just try to remain in that state of stillness. If you want to chant any mantra, or if you like to visualize any deity, any light, you may do so. You can try to place your mental attention at the point between the eyebrows or at the point in the center of the chest area. Our idea is, as the body becomes still, our eyes become still, and the various parts of the body become still, the mind is naturally becoming more and more still. And with that still mind, we can gently direct our attention rather than having to forcibly or stressfully create a state. So just for a couple of minutes, we try to practice this natural state of stillness, which is an essential quality for contemplation. You can gently become aware of activities going outwardly and try to direct those activities of the mind inwardly. The sounds we hear or the sensations we pursue, the smells around us, all that are the activities outward that cause the mind to go outward. What a yogi does in meditation is he slowly tries to bring all those outward going activities of the mind to inwards through the sankalpa, through the intention, and through also trying to become aware of subtler perceptions within. What is this subtler perception? First, perception is awareness of our own breathing. We are gently not aware that there is a breathing activity going on within us all the time. Deeper, subtler perceptions could be some feeling in the heart, feeling of peace, or some kind of a perception, visual perception, especially at the point between the eyebrows. The feeling of peace is a very subtle perception perceived by the mind. And as the mind becomes still, we are able to abide in that inner peace. And then the mind becomes steady and unflickering, just like an example that's given in Bhagavad Gita. Yatha dipo nivataste, nengate sopama smrita, yogina tadachittasya, yogino yata chittasya, yunjato yogamatmanaha. Just like a lamp in a windless place remains steady, unflickering, unmoving. So too the mind of that yogi becomes still and steady in meditation. So this kind of a stillness, we don't need to force it. It's naturally induced, naturally created. So now we'll gently try to move to the next phase of our session today, which is the contemplation exercise. So as I mentioned earlier, this contemplation exercise is based on the teachings of non-duality and mostly what is known as Advaita Vedanta teachings. So in this teachings, we understand that we first need to have a certain kind of understanding on what is meant here as consciousness, what is meant as Advaita, non-duality. We are generally engaged in a subject-object experience. The mind and all the objects of its perceptions. And if not from the senses of perception, the mind also has other kind of activity, which is the mind giving command to different parts of the body, for the body to move, for my hands, feet, speech, all of that to happen. So the mind is engaged in this kind of a subject-object dialogue. And the mind also has other activities such as recalling memory, such as visualizing, creating an image for future. It is also the cause of a lot of anxiety, fears, and stressful emotions. So rising above these activities of the mind is the goal of non-duality, Advaita Vedanta, where we realize that not through the act of forcibly controlling the mind, nor through the act of or the discipline of the yogi in learning how to work with the mind. The one who comes to Advaita Vedanta realizes that the mind is naturally controlled through the realization of one's true self, consciousness, pure consciousness. Because it's through the power of consciousness that the mind operates. It's through the power of consciousness that all the other subsequent activities that happen in the body, feelings, and even this kind of a contemplation which we are doing now. So as one of the Upanishad, Mandukya Upanishads tells us, that when we realize the nature of the true self, consciousness, then we realize that the mind is not just the mind as we know it. The mind becomes what is called as no mind, or it doesn't become that mind which is causing us the stressful. The mind learns to operate through the power of consciousness and doesn't hinder us from our realization of the self. Atma Satyanubodhena na sankalpyate yada amanastvam tadayati grahya bhave tadagraham. So this is Mandukya Upanishad saying, when we realize our consciousness, Atma Satya Nubodhena, the true self, the true consciousness, and all these other activities of the mind, other kind of thoughts that arise from the subconscious or the unconscious, which we don't have control over, which keeps us engaged day to day in different activities, pursuits, and also different fears, emotions, sadness, depression, all those, the cause of all that gets uprooted. So going beyond the mind, or knowing the true nature of the mind, we come to what is known as our own self, pure self, consciousness. The nature of this consciousness is also known through such contemplations which we are doing now. Contemplations such as trying to find out what is it in me that is unchanging, nitya. My body keeps changing. My thoughts and feelings keep changing. But I, as consciousness, am always present. I'm aware. So the nature of this awareness itself, this pure awareness, which is not an awareness related to an object, such as a sound I'm hearing, or some object I see, but that object, that kind of awareness which precedes that object awareness, or which is the substratum of every other awareness we have. That is that pure awareness. And because it's so easily accessible and it's so simply known, that we tend to forget about it. We tend to ignore it. So when we do such contemplations, we try to recognize that pure nature of our own awareness before it gets objectified with some thing or with some thought. This awareness is ever pure. And this awareness is not even subject to birth and death. It is not born on a certain day, and nor does it die on a certain day. Ajati. And that is the eternal nature of all of us, each of us. We are this pure awareness. Through the different teachings of Advaita Vedanta, what we are given is nothing but what is known as pointing out instructions, which comes through us in the form of scriptures, through the teacher. And what it is pointing to is not some object somewhere out in the world, that I have to travel there or I have to mentally make an effort to attain. This awareness is the essence of our own being, the true nature of our being. And due to our ignorance, as it's known, or due to our own excessive attention to worldly things, we ignore this. And so we get stuck in what is known as the cycles of samsara, or the cycles of life and death, the waves of karma. And to free ourselves from this, what we really need is not so much of attaining something or going somewhere. Atma Satyanubodhena, the realization or the knowingness of one's own true self, is all that is required. The reality of myself, the reality of who I truly am, that is the key to be free from all our own daily life ups and downs, and to be free from this whole wave of what is known as samsara, the world that I perceive. The reality of the world I perceive is instantaneously also known the moment we know that who we truly are. So let us just take the last couple of minutes and just relax and allow the mind to naturally dwell in these thoughts. So we can continue with these contemplations during as we go about with all our activities. The more the mind comes back to abide in its true self, then the less does it get affected by all the other activities that goes on in one's day. Atma satyanubodhena na sankalpyate yada amanastvam tadayati kraya bhave tadagraham. When the reality of one's own true self is realized, the mind ceases its unnecessary pursuits and becomes what is called as amani, doesn't become the troubled mind anymore, doesn't grasp at objects, desires, unnecessarily seeking. That takes us away from our own inner peace. Let us just say a closing prayer. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.